And you gotta watch the ones they poison.
Yeah.
You know, when they plant them in there, they have them poisoned in 3 or 4 years.
And we got a few things to cover today. So if we bring up the agenda, please.
Chat real quick. Yeah, sorry. I'm just I'm a little behind.
Okay, so we'll start off as we always do with kind of an introductory. We'll start it off with the folks that are in the conference room here, and then we'll move to the people that are on the screen. So I'll start to my right with Carl.
I have nothing to add unless you've.
No, just introduce yourself.
Oh, we're just doing introductions.
No pressure, you
I'm
got
like, hey, I don't have anything to talk about on the agenda, but I'm happy to.
We're not pressuring you.
We're just doing that. All right.
When he doesn't know his own name, I am a little concerned.
I can sound it out. I got most of it. Colin Charbonneau, Director of the County Public Defender's Office.
Tori Peterson, Juvenile Court Administrator.
Tim Fitzgerald, County Clerk.
Katie McNulty, Deputy Prosecutor.
John Haley, Community Representative.
Julie McKay, Superior Court.
Karen Westberg, Law and Justice.
Darren Watkins, Interested Observer.
Okay, Mike Sparber, Senior Director of Law and Justice, and then we'll start with the judge. Either one.
Bowers, Spokane County District Court.
Okay. Girl, is that right?
Hi, Judge Gerald from Airway Heights Municipal Court.
Okay.
And
Cheryl. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl Topsred, Pretrial Services Manager.
Ken,
Ken Moore, County Project Manager.
is there any more I'm not seeing?
Laura.
Laura?
Randy.
Laura Padden, Spokane Valley City Council.
Randy.
And Randy?
Randy Unfred, Field Administrator for Department of Corrections.
Perfect. Well, we'll start off like we always do, which is an approval on the minutes for May 11th. Unless there's any comment on it. Any comment? All those that want to approve, or is there any motion to approve the minutes from last one?
Motion to approve.
Any seconds? Okay. It's been approved and seconded. So the minutes, and then we'll move right into the agenda.
Approved and seconded. Everyone has to vote the same.
Okay, all in favor, but everybody's head was going like this, so I thought it was okay. All right, there we go. All right, so we're gonna begin with, at the beginning, the onslaught of the meeting, we had talked about the racial inequity impact assessment for all the projects that we move forward out of this group, or make a proposal to have. And I would see the department heads at that level would run their, whatever project they're doing, would run it through this toolkit. I'll be since adopted as the chair. And we also applied this when we looked at the bylaws. We individually, the folks that were on the work group took this packet, we reviewed it, and then we came back as a team. And then we discussed it, and then we made the necessary adjustments on it. So I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that we're trying to set the standard here moving forward. And the bylaws did undergo that process. Is there any questions about that? Anybody have a chance to read through this packet here? Okay. If you don't, I would suggest you do, because it's really not bad. It's just really some generalized questions and things that you should be able to answer, for projects. And the thing is on this, it doesn't necessarily stop at one, one recital. As the projects, get growing and developing, you can also add other elements to it, and it helps bring some of the awareness that's behind it. So any, no comments on this?
I'll comment on it just briefly. I just think it's a really good tool. The people who, the committee who put it together spent a lot of time on it. I see a lot of heart in it, a lot of desire to make some adjustments, and I think it can apply to all kinds of work that we do at this level, and all the committees really should take a look at it and use it in any decisions that they have to make. It's an excellent tool.
It is an excellent tool.
So Mike, in addition to that, we do got to tie it in with some of our RCWs.
Okay.
RCW and agency GR
33 is the
33.
request for accommodations.
Right, the 30, I think we have a couple core general rules that the court's gonna have to take a look at as they look at the tool to make sure that, tool is in compliance with what these court rules allow and do not allow,
Super. Yeah. And
just to bracket the conversation.
okay. And then how do we know, yeah.
I don't, but I guess we could put a group together to just kind of take a look at that.
Yeah, I think we should. I think the more information we can gain, the more minds we have looking at this, the better off.
I have a question there saying who was in the work group and where will this assessment be shared?
It's just, we have the assessment on here, right? Correct.
We have the blank one.
The
on
blank
here,
one, okay.
Not showing the one.
So we'll have to put the one that we put together, we'll get it on the website so that everybody can review that. And then involved in the group, work group was Judge Maurer, myself, John Haley, Laura Patton, and Larry Haskell.
Yeah.
So that's who it was comprised of. And each of us did an independent review of it. And then came back collectively and then developed the one that we'll put on the website so everyone can see that. So, all right. Hope Megan, is there anything else, Megan?
Let's see if she wants to speak.
Okay. Super. All right.
If I could make a comment.
No,
Mr.
go ahead,
Schwarber.
Amy. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you. Oh, that's okay. So I was part of the initial committee that created the toolkit, and I can't remember Karen, who is on all of that, but there were several folks on that, and the toolkit itself was posted then for public comment before it was adopted, and it kind of went through all the processes and procedures. In comment to Tim's question, it was assumed that there may be components of projects that statutes or court rules would influence. And so there is a portion within the toolkit that says essentially, what statutes or rules or laws, et cetera, might have an effect on the implications of the toolkit itself, and what is a possible remedy to those. So it's built into the toolkit that there might be policies or practices that are required, but may have disparate impacts, and that there's a place for that to be noted. I do want to encourage folks when they implement the use of the toolkit to really, when we were, and I'll just fall on the sword, so to speak. When the bylaws committee was implementing the toolkit, we did it at the end as opposed to the beginning. And I think that was just because it wasn't decided until we were through the process that we would be implementing the toolkit in relationship to the adoption of the rules. But the toolkit itself really calls for implementation at the beginning, because it talks about who of the stakeholders are going to be present throughout the implementation process by virtue of the kinds of questions that are asked. Who is involved, on the group or the committee that's going to be utilizing the toolkit, and for the policy that you're implementing. And so I would argue that there are potentially some holes in the review that we did because we did not allow community members to either attend, to listen, or to give feedback through the process of the bylaws review. That was the subject that was debated. It was a conversation piece for 2 or 3 meetings, but the majority vote determined that they were not going to allow community participation. So when you look at the toolkit itself and the essentially overall opinion out of the toolkit, it's going to be limited based on the way that it was adopted. But I do think that part of that was because we adopted it at the end as opposed to the beginning. So moving forward, I encourage those department heads, if you're going to utilize the toolkit, that you look at that and how to utilize it from the beginning of the project as opposed to the end, because you're going to have difficulty if you try to do it at the end.
Thank you, Judge Mauer. They're very, very good points. And yeah, you're right. It was kind of, I think it would be a lot less cumbersome if we'd have done it at the beginning. I think we all realize that. So I that's good information for the department head, that's for sure. And I saw one from Liz Moore on there. Yes, we did adopt it as part of the SRLJC, and it's already been, I know, adopted by district court. So this is going to be, hopefully, not hopefully, this will be a standard that we'll use moving forward for all of our projects. So.
I guess I have a comment on that, Mike. I was just wondering, and we talked about this in our meeting, and we're going to vote on the bylaws today. And yet this toolkit is not a part of the bylaws. And that was the only question that I had, if we should put it in the bylaws as, you know, standard, or if we just go on our honor and each committee who's formed hereafter just use the toolkit. I recommend that they use the toolkit. I don't know if it needs to be adopted into the bylaws or not, but it would be a quick addition, I think, someplace. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as we get ready to vote on the bylaws. If somebody wants to hold it up because of that, I wouldn't object to that.
I would, to add in those comments, I would, you know, the use of the toolkit itself is really restricted to the criminal justice system. It's, you know, so for example, it might be helpful, you know, for facilities or something, but it really wasn't created for implementation for all county departments. It really is focused on the criminal justice system. And when district court, we voted to unanimously adopt the use of the toolkit. What we did is we voted to use it for any substantial policies or practices that would be implemented, because you know, if we're deciding what color pens to use, for example, it's probably more work than it's worth. So for administrative decisions, for example, we wouldn't necessarily use the toolkit, but if it's a significant policy or practice that's going to affect the way that we do business, the judges have committed to utilizing the toolkit. So, you know, I think that it's a good practice. It's, you know, I would support including it in the bylaws, if for no other reason that I suspect this body of folks are going to change over time. For example, I'm going to rotate out of being presiding at the end of this year, and a new judge is going to take my place. And so if it's in the bylaws, regardless of personal preference or personal commitment, it will remain the commitment of this board to have that as a practice. So I would suggest adopting it as part of the bylaws.
In the bylaws. Any other discussion?
That could be just an additional change.
Yeah, that's not much of an additional change.
we
though.
made.
No, it would probably end up in Article 10, maybe under committee structure. We haven't voted on it yet. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. It's coming up next on the agenda, but I don't know. What do you think, Karen?
I think, I don't have it in front of me, so I can bring it up.
In the toolkit that we filled out as the committee who's working on the bylaws, we went to item number 5. The last item is called evaluation. And we referenced Article 10 in that. And there is also a note that says maybe it should be put into the bylaws, but maybe not. Kind of I'm just looking for an input from the council on whether or not they think that
It should be.
when we get ready to vote, we could just give it a nod. We could jump it in there. I'm not sure. Talking in circles, I realize that when you're trying to.
You said Article 12?
10.
Article 12,
No, I'm sorry. Article 10.
Article 10 was where I thought that. No, it would.
Is item G?
Just make an H, maybe.
or I'm sorry, H.
H.
Okay. I'm not. A comment from the view.
I just really believe in this toolkit strongly.
Oh, yeah, I think it does. I just think that, I'm just wondering whether or not it should be a part of the bylaws. I like the sustainability of it, but I wonder if it couldn't be captured some other way. So,
I wonder that too, because the reason the committee who formed the bylaws did it was because the chair of this council said, I recommend that you guys use the racial equity toolkit.
So,
And my only thought would be that normally when I think about bylaws for some type of council, I think that of procedural mechanisms through which the council is run. So maybe the toolkit could be kind of like an asterisk or something where we say we're going to, be led by the principles in the toolkit, but not necessarily make it a bylaw. But that's just my initial thought when looking at the two things.
Well, any committee I'm on, we're gonna use it.
well, I would encourage all of us to use it.
John, you remember what, 5-6 years ago, when we worked on the bylaws, you and I, and our
Yeah.
Pacific people in our strategic planning work group, remember that?
Mhm.
And we came to that same discussion on bylaws, the mechanics of running the council, and then policies. Remember, we created a separate.
Oh,
policy
that's right. We
document.
have a policy manual too.
So
We have,
I'm just wondering, I'm just throwing it out there for people to think about, would this fit into the policy manual side of the house, just as a thought?
that's an excellent point.
I don't think we're gonna create a policy now.
Okay.
We decided the bylaws.
No, we didn't. As a matter of fact, we specifically got rid of the policy portion of the
Okay,
the bylaws that had the policy portion of it. And I think that, right, so I think that this conversation in and of itself highlights potentially the need to put it in the bylaws, because you have differencing levels of commitment within this group voiced to use the race equity toolkit. And Ozzy, has made a commitment to use it for all policies and practices, but he's also going to rotate off. And so, I think that this is an opportunity for this board to demonstrate a continued commitment to utilizing a toolkit that prior to implementation of practices or policies asks some very, thoughtful questions that arguably should be asked anyway. It's just recognizing that we're going to take the time on the front end to ask those questions, as opposed to, I think everybody we want to do the right thing and we try to do the right thing, but if we're not asking some of those significant questions, we can forget about, how these great ideas might affect folks. And so I know Maggie did it with the rideshare initiative. We did it with the bylaws. It's, it's cumbersome, but it's not difficult. And it didn't take us more than a day or a meeting session to do it. And it was designed that way to be as user-friendly as possible, as opposed to an erroneous or a very laborious sort of toolkit when the committee was selecting toolkits. So, I think it's worthwhile putting into the bylaws.
Well, I would entertain that too, is making it, H in the bylaws, but the only thing one concern that I have is, will this information be updated? Will there be other methodologies put in place? So I think it needs to include some kind of language that says, based on I don't know, but if this changes, like they add new research comes out, it changes the layout of it, we have to have some ability to change it and make adjustments for it.
And we do. As Tim talked about it, when we passed the previous bylaws, and a week later, we had a resolution that amended for the racial equity committee.
Yeah.
And so it's a living document, if you allow me that. And if something comes up where the toolkit needs to be adjusted, we can adjust the bylaws. We've got a good foundation here, and I'll argue that I think the toolkit should be in there simply because Judge Mauer said this body does change as people come and go, and we need it in there for history and for future members to take a look at. I like it. It is very simple. I went through it personally and came back to the committee with my thoughts. It took me 1 hour to go through this toolkit, to come up with the answers that I had, and I felt pretty good about it. It's just something you need to sit on, and we bounce things back and forth, and it doesn't take that long to do it. It's a very good document.
I hear what you're saying though, Mike, and so maybe the language is more general, that an equity toolkit approved by the council will be
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Something that's, gives us the latitude, because we may come across something that's even,
Okay,
had better research by, I don't know.
I'm tracking now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. So I would open it up the table. Does anyone want to move to add this to the bylaws as as item H under, was it Article 10? Yeah.
I'll move.
I gotta say, anyone want a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
All right, all, go ahead.
I have some discussion here. Should
Discussion?
it be under section 10 or should it be under the powers and duties? And that would be Article 5.
All right, let's
Powers
review
and
it.
duties, if our powers and duties require the equity toolkit to be used. Not sure it's under committee structure.
Powers and duties. I'm sorry, which article did you say, Judge? 5?
I'm sorry, Article 3, powers and duties. I'm looking at the wrong one, which would be G.
All right.
Because to me, structure of the committee, I think you need to use the tool for something other than committee work that this committee, in addition to any subcommittees created, would be using the tool. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and Judge McKay, I think that the, under subsection E, it says reviewing the recommendations made by the Spokane Regional Criminal Justice Commission regarding the governance reform research. That would seem to be a good natural place to put. So instead of F being F, make the new provision F, and then make what is currently F, G. That dovetails, I think it dovetails well following E.
Is that under Article 3?
Yeah.
Judge Bauer?
Yes.
Everyone's thoughts on that?
I think it fits there too.
Yes, okay, I'm getting a lot of head nods on that. Okay, so I'll change my ask to adding it to Article 3 rather than Article 10.
So you want John just to amend his motion?
Yeah.
John,
Amend your motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept this in Article 3, item G, that the racial equity toolkit be used.
Some language that's wrapped around it, right? Does that-
Subject to
Yeah.
the approval of the SRLJC.
I like Tori's language on that, but we'll have to
Yeah,
kind of,
that was Tori's.
okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the.
What's that?
Okay, and then all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Just show your hand on the screen so we can out, yeah.
Can we do that now, Karen, so we can get this bylaws out of the way and vote on it today? Not,
I don't think it'll take you long to knock it out. Like famous last words, you know what I'm saying, but
well, one of the
in a
things,
room of attorneys, it's not easy. Okay, all opposed? Show of hands. Okay, let it reflect it, passed unanimous. Randy, did you abstain? Did you say, did you vote? You're on mute, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I agree. I vote yes.
Okay, all right. Let's show that it passed unanimously, and now let's work on the wording of it so we get it out of. Go ahead, Tori, say what you said.
Oh, you got the best.
I'm
that
putting
I
you on the
got.
spot. There you go.
The council or all committees and all committees shall use an equity toolkit.
That's been approved by
By the council
the council.
in the establishment of policy practice that will, I don't know, attorneys, come on, jump in here.
Yeah, I need the attorneys involved in this one.
So maybe the Spokane Regional Criminal Justice Commission and all committees shall use the equity assessment toolkit as approved by the board.
By the council.
Yeah, council,
That
council
work?
board, yeah.
Did you type that?
By the council.
No, council, us.
SRLJC.
Oh,
Just take out Board of County Commissioners and put in the council for SRLJC.
I know that does reach me. For, are we gonna say for anything or just using it for when creating policies or what? In the development of. Do you need policy change? You need me to make it bigger? Yeah.
And I would take out council for SRLJC or whatever its acronym is.
By the SRLJC. Here?
Wherever council was, yeah. Add in the back language on it.
Looking for more, Karen?
Yes.
When developing policies and
Project,
Policies, procedures, and possible recommendations, because part of what we're doing is making recommendations to VOCC.
policies, common procedures, and recommendations.
And could be various. Now that lawyers are putting too many words.
And I recommend changing the to and, use and equity assessment.
come on, attorneys. Looking good here.
That's the Zoom folks, they like that too.
So, not to be nitpicky, but, the lawyer in me's coming out. So shall use, and I think it should say racial equity impact assessment, because that's actually the toolkit that's been adopted. That's the name of it.
Yeah, and council. Council.
Yeah, racial equity impact assessment.
Judge, the idea was to stay away from something specific in
Yeah.
case it were to change to get modified
Or we
through the
adopt,
years.
yeah.
But wouldn't it still be, I mean, wouldn't it still be the racial impact assessment toolkit that is adopted by the committee?
That's the title of it. The document is entitled.
So I suppose what you're saying, Tori, is like, let's say, to next year, something comes out that's called the race
With the IL.
impact toolkit that we want to use. You want to keep it broad enough so that we're not naming a specific toolkit. What I'm thinking on the other side of that argument, sort of devil's advocate, is it's difficult then when you read the bylaws. Let's say all of us leave and 5 years from now, some totally different board, and they say, well, was it this one that we've adopted to use, or was it just any one that we decide to use? I guess what I'm posing is I guess Ozzy, as the chairperson, has said, this is the toolkit that we'll use, as opposed to just any toolkit out there.
Then, yeah, I agree. So maybe after toolkit, we add or.
Or if there is another toolkit that comes out that is,
So if we add,
is,
or up to toolkit, or as approved by the, then that gives us the latitude.
yeah,
Something different.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Comments about the language, anything you want to adjust?
I think the or needs to be in front of toolkit.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think too, if you just uncapitalized racial equity impact assessment, you could just leave it as is, then it would read use A as opposed to B. And it's not a title of anything, it's just what it is. Might
Yeah,
be less
there you go.
confusing.
I would suggest putting,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would suggest putting the word other before toolkit or other toolkit as approved.
Okay.
I
Any
also
other-
like a comma after procedures, but that's my style.
Any other comments? Yeah, I think that would be our ultimate goal, Megan. Okay, so I'll just put it out there, all in favor of, or can I have a motion to adopt the language that's specified in F under
Well,
article?
We don't really need to adopt that, I don't think, because we haven't adopted.
We're gonna
the
vote on the
bylaws
whole thing
yet.
in a minute.
Okay, what do you have to adopt it separately and that by adding it or not? No. All right. I should read Robert's rules. So you're good to get that.
If you approve the whole thing, it encompasses that change.
All right, let's do that then. All right, so. All those.
It seems like Megan is suggesting that we add language to subsection F to regularly review the toolkit for updates. I just
Yeah,
think
that was the reason that I had gone for the or other, that. It would be the responsibility of this council to review the toolkit that there is, or other toolkits has been recommended.
What I might suggest too, Mike, is, because if I am hearing Megan correctly, and it's, it's a text, that's hard to hear her, but I think perhaps there's interest in being able to have the voices of community members, which were included specifically when the initial committee created the toolkit, to give feedback as to the development of the toolkit. And so I think what she's saying is, when you're looking to update it, or if there needs to be updates, that specifically community members or community voices be heard. What might be a good idea is to, because I think that's valuable comment. But what I'm hoping is that perhaps the Spokane, the SRLJC Racial Equity Disparity Subcommittee, perhaps that could be one of their annual duties or responsibilities, is to review the toolkit within that subcommittee, where there is much more diversity and committee involvement, and they could bring any recommendations for updates then as related to the toolkit back to the council. And they could also just be responsible for reviewing that document annually to ensure that it is, following best practices.
Yeah, I like that. Excellent. And I think that it does fall on the shoulders of that committee to do that, is to do a continued look at that, so. Okay, that could just be something we specify to that particular committee to do as one of their purposes they do. It doesn't necessarily have to be spelled out in the bylaws for it. So, okay. Try this again. Do I hear a motion to adopt the bylaws as presented today? for adoption for the SRLJC. A motion?
I'll do it, but I was on the committee, so I feel like
All right, somebody else has to do it.
Being on the committee doesn't stop you from making a motion.
I'll move to adopt.
Okay. Second?
Is that Randy?
I was on the committee, but I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for throwing me that lifeline. I appreciate it. All right, all in favor? Let's see a show of hands.
Any discussion?
Oh, any discussion? I'm sorry, it's a Robert rules, whatever. Any discussion?
Perhaps the committee can assist with kind of some thought process here, somebody from the committee? Give an overview of bylaws?
sure, we already had the bylaws from a previous, as I mentioned, from a previous work group, and it was voted on toward the end of when we started to change everything and we readjusted the membership. And so we had a pretty good working tool there. We had to change some things. I think probably one of the biggest changes that we made, I'm not sure where it is in here, but it has to do with committee, the number of members on a committee. And we decided that it would be 5. And there was a little discrepancy. The Racial Equity Committee, I believe, is restricted to 5 members. Now, they get all kinds of public comment and a lot of people can attend because it's an open public meeting. And I think in the old bylaws, we had that a committee should not be more than 8. And so that didn't jive. And so we said, okay, we're going to go with 5 to match what the Racial Equity Committee is restricted to. And so that was what I think was the biggest change. So a lot of this stuff is in the old bylaws. We spent 3 years on that baby.
Yeah, and I would just add too, Judge, that
That was the old one.
we tried to adhere to the resolution from the board as closely as we could on all of this. So most of the language that's included in these bylaws came directly out of the resolution produced by the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, a lot of it is by the resolution. And I'm just going to say again that it wouldn't surprise me if in 6 months we vote on this again because something comes up. I mean, it's just been, that's previous experience. And so, but we spent a number of years, I think it was close to 3 years meeting every month. Karen was on it, Tim was on it.
Yeah, that was the old bylaws. We did a really detailed job on that.
Yeah,
We really did.
we did it from scratch
So
though.
it's from scratch, yeah.
So that's about the comments I can make on it, Judge. So.
I appreciate that. Having not been part of the process the first time through and new to the committee, it's helpful.
Something.
And we had public comment during that time too. We had many times we had guests and they made comments and were pretty much treated as members of that committee. So 2 representatives, Carmen and I both were on that committee for bylaws too.
Any other discussion?
I'm glad to see equitable is in there because a couple of versions that I saw in drafts did not have equitable in the mission statement.
Yeah, we added that in. And that actually came to a suggestion of Judge Mauer and it was included. We kind of reworded that whole paragraph and then added it.
It's buried a little more than I think it should be, but it's in there. So.
Yeah. Any hands up over here?
I do see there is a question in as to why there was a reduction from 8 to 5. And I can say that I don't know. I apologize. I didn't attend that particular bylaws meeting. So maybe somebody could fill in, Megan. I will note to follow up on Tori's comment that we did it, the initial section of the mission statement, I think specifically said, racial equitable outcomes or something, but by using the term equitable, it really broadened the scope of who that applied to. So, we're talking about equitable outcomes regardless of sex, gender, race, ethnicity. And I think that's one reason the committee selected to use that term as opposed to more limiting other language that could have been put in there. And so I appreciate the committee, recognizing the need for that and including it. And then I don't know if anybody has an answer to Megan's question.
Yeah, and then also, the 5 members, if I remember right, came out of the resolution from the BOCC,
That's right.
from 8, and it was included as part of the actual resolution language. Are you pulling the resolution up?
Yes.
We're gonna double check just to make sure. Any other discussion why Karen's pulling this up?
Be at large community members.
So that's a 3 at large, okay, but does it have anything specifically about the members and the structure of how many members could be on the committees in there?
Oh, yeah, yes, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure we're getting the answer back. to how much it is.
I don't see it, but I can help you find it.
It's right there. Hold on.
Oh, it was just there, right there.
So you can see that it was actually pulled right out of the resolution and added in. Okay. Any other discussion? Do I dare say it? If I want to say it or not. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing no more discussion, do I have a motion to adopt the bylaws for the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council?
The motion, sorry, been made.
But didn't leave room for discussion.
Now we can just vote.
Yeah,
All right, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, seeing that it passes unanimously, we have formally adopted these as our bylaws for Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council. Moses, what time is it? Okay. Moving on, next agenda item. Okay, so this next topic, we'll pull up the PowerPoint for it, is a continued conversation that has occurred since 2009 and has been ongoing for a new jail discussion. And there's been a conversation that has led up to, to the point to where it was included this board here, the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Board. At the time, they had a facilities committee that was assigned to it, was assigned to facilities committee. And since has been going through iteration after iteration in concert with some of the justice reform efforts out of the MacArthur Foundation, Safety and Justice Council, and other reviews as by the Blueprint of Reform and some of the other people that had an opportunity to look at it from an outside looking in. You go to the next slide. We'll go one more. But we gotta run out of time. So this is kind of a timeline, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We began this analysis, the real analysis, in 2000. We had someone from the National Institute of Corrections who was David Bennett. Most of you guys have probably met David Bennett, along with Dennis Liebert. They came in and we hired them under contract to do an evaluation of our jail and our space needs. We also had Looking Glass, which is Robert Glass, do an outside look to project what our needs were going to be. And he produced a report out of that. During the conversation, we had a couple iterations of some jail designs that were along the way. Some were felt to be too costly, some were felt to be too big. Some were, some needed elements of the community correction center. We traveled throughout the United States and looked at several different jails and, got an opportunity to look at their models. We actually have adopted in our conceptual plans is the concept of having the community correction center, which would be a resource center for offenders headed back to reentry. It'd be a really structured form to where they would have expectations while they're at the community corrections to, get their driver's license and or their ID cards and do a job search and those type of things. But it also would have a continuum, kind of a rubber band. And that is that they would actually have a developed caseworker that's working with them each case, around their specific needs, addressing that in the community, and then introduce them to reentry as they could in conjunction with the courts. And while they're in the community, they would have continual contact by the caseworkers to check on progress and their legal progress, just to make sure if there's anything that we could do to help. If it's any violations, it doesn't automatically mean that it's a go back to the booking area. We're hoping to have some incentive or some integrated steps along the way that might include maybe day reporting. Hey, listen, you're not really getting this done the way we want you to. We'd like to see you do some day reporting. Maybe it's electrical monitoring or something else. So it's all integrated, and that would fall back into the community correction center on a reentry model. The jail beds themselves, if you pull up the slide with the count, do you have the count? And we only have 15 minutes, and this is like really
And
good.
we have till 1:30.
We have to, okay, 45 minutes, I might make it. Okay, move the slide.
We have to stop this and share.
And I'll show you our account today as it sits. And then I'll kind of give you some explanation around it. Karen's pulling it up right now. But you have to keep up about 5 or 6 different documents.
Let me see if I can-
And really today's conversation about the deal, just to open the dialogue about it. It's going to come to the SRLJC probably several times from that, and then involve a huge, community education component, and just get the dialogue going. You find it?
Yeah, I found it, sorry.
There it is. Okay. So what you're looking at right now, and I would stand up for these guys, but what you're looking at right now is our population. And so it kind of tracks, stop right there, Karen. It looks at what the intake is versus the releases and the amount of change. And so in order for this to have much of a change at all on the intake side of it, it depends on what the severity of the charges are. If they're coming in for a felony and they have their 72 hours before the prosecutors make their on and on and on. So if you look in the middle section, this is the downtown facility right here. The downtown jail was built for 462 inmates. That's what it was built for. It was built as a direct supervision jail, which means that there was one officer to 46 inmates on each floor. Right now, you can see the counts on the floor, on the population floor, 60s, 80s, 87, 45. These are double bumped. You see what I'm saying? So there's 2 people in each cell. And what that does for us is that if you're looking at 63 people, for every 46 inmates, it takes an officer to watch them. So if there's more than the 47th inmate, it requires 2 staff members to be up there to watch the 47th inmate. You don't actually gain economies of scale unless that number is 92. Or, so it doesn't, you don't break even on it. So anything less than that is loss of supervision capacity, if that makes sense. Because the person's able to watch 46 of them, but instead he's making up the difference from the first 46. So these are all double bumped right here. And then currently the 63 number that you see right here is a requirement for the COVID periods that they have to wait out to make sure that, they can get through the COVID period we call the isolation period. And then once they've satisfied their, I think it's 10 days, then they could be moved on to the rest of the population. You look at the Geiger side, can you minimize? There you go. Can you go down a little bit?
Oh,
On the Geiger side, you'll see a 0 on A1, 0 on A2, 0 on B1. This is because we are down 30 officers and we've had to pull those staff to come back downtown. We're not even operating those floors right there because we don't have enough staff to operate them. But even if we did, Geiger is meant to be a low-level, low-charge, community correction style housing module. And so it excludes a lot of our population from even going out there in the first place because of their charges and the seriousness natures of what they're involved with. So our total count today is at 844. The majority of it is downtown, which is telling us that there are more severe, serious charges. In a conversation yesterday, I think we were well over 12 or 13 in for murder at this point. I mean, the charges are growing and it's changing. The demographic is changing. We don't have as many that we could shuffle around. So to go back up, please. So if you look at the downtown jail, we have essentially those floors right there. The 3W is actually females, and that's isolated to the female population. So that takes it off. The 4E is mental health floor, and that's only for the mental health and their treatment up there. That floor can't be doubled up, and you can't use that capacity as well. So really what you're talking about is 4 East, 4 West, 5 East, and 5 West as your housing units. And we have to kind of move the population around based on their classification. They come into the jail, some are maximum, some are medium, some are medium. And so we have to move those around based on what we're looking at here. Okay, so go back to the slide presentation. Curtis, I'll get back to you. I saw you had a comment.
no, several chats. So you want to.
Back to the presentation. So if you look at this timeline, the reason I put this in here is that we have been involved with, since 2000, we've been involved with several different looks from outside venues. We've got numerous consultants come in and talk about our needs and evaluate our jail needs. We've been involved with the Safety and Justice Challenge and all the reforms that could be involved, that were produced out of that. What I'm trying to say is that I think we've done a lot of due diligence up front before we could even started to have this conversation on this level here for a new jail. Can you go to the next slide?
Sorry, I think I opened the wrong one. I apologize.
All right, hang on, she's getting there. There you go. So this is kind of a list of who we've had. David Bennett from the National Institute of Corrections come in and evaluate it. Donna Latin from the National Institute of Correction. Lindsay Haight, suicide expert, came in and talked to us about how to do better practice in suicide prevention, which we implemented I think every one of his recommendations, except for letting them out of their cells more often, which we can't do because they're double bunked and we don't have enough, time in the day to get those folks out like we'd like to. Dennis Lieber, who came in and programmed the jail, looked at our specific layout to see if there's anything that we could do differently with the boxes that we have and then operate them differently on a different operational plan, and also gave us advice. And I have all of these reports. Carter Goble Lee that came in and they did to look at our square footage and then evaluated what our needs would be as well. Integris Architecture is the one that's responsible for doing all of our renderings, drawings, and everything up until this point. Safety and Justice Challenge, you guys are well aware of that and our involvement with that. The Blueprint Reform, we sponsored that with Mayor Condon and Commissioner Todd Milkey at the time. Can you minimize that? I can't see because there's that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. All right. And then along with the jail look, you have to do each jail or airport or cemetery or any of those not so pleasant things you have to locate, have to go through the essential public facility siting process. We've done 3 of those since the time in 2000. Each of those are worth about 6 months worth of work at public meetings We've worked with Jackie Van Warmer, we've worked with Maggie Yates and now myself. So next slide, please. So a little history about it. It was opened in 1986. You can see that it was built for 462 inmates. We did a double bunking. We welded in new bunks in each one of the cells, so now it holds 675, but the infrastructure is built for 462. So it's continually taxing. We're at our second set of elevators, our third property carousel. We're holding the property because the property can't keep up with it. I've already talked about the overcrowded conditions. And then if it's the operating inefficiencies. Okay. Is there a way that the comments cannot go right in the middle of that? All right. And then Geiger's 1942 Army barracks. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure to go out there or not, but it's literally an Army barracks. All the rooms have no doors on them. It's they stay in a room by compliance. That's why it's low level, folks that are housed out there. It's located on leased land from the Spokane International Airport. Once we leave, we have to level it down to dirt. That's the way we have to leave it. And Larry Crowder and his team has been very good to work with. They've, extended our leases, even though they want to use that space that we're on for avionics use rather than what we're using it for. They've been very gracious to let us stay in there. As it sits right now, we need about 39 million to upgrade Geiger to make it last for another 10 years. And we'll show you some of the pictures of what that looks like. The kitchen literally, when you walk into it, the parts of it have fallen through to the dirt below. They covered up. The kitchen is in total disarray and needs to be overhauled. Go to the next slide, please. And Ken, I'll let you jump in at some point too, if you want to. Again, I've talked about these. He's talked about the overcrowding and 1:46 ratios for the officers. We're using 2 officers up there to supervise less than their capacity to do so. Next slide. So some of the retrofits that we're talking about here, you can see the dormitories here on the lower left. This is the style that I'm talking about. You can see it is Army barracks. That's what it was designed for. If we do have, we have it reinforced. There is 2 housing units, which is A and B. And then the kitchen would sit over here. And then the administration, this is programs in the medical wing over here in D. And you could go to the next slide. Here's what it looks like in most of the buildings. That's what the pipes look like that we're trying to hold together. And every time, ironically, if you guys are all homeowners, that once you start repairing one thing, something else goes down. And that has been the story for Geiger. A lot of the parts, because it was constructed so long ago, are hard to come by. Some have to be manufactured or fabricated in order to work. Next one, please. Here's some more pictures, and you can see that the code, what it was back then, is not what it is right now. There's some of the wiring for it and things that need to be retrofitted in order to get another 10 years of life out of this building out there. Go ahead. So kind of the strategy is we're looking for something to absorb the Geiger Corrections inmate population so we can vacate Geiger completely and not throw the $39 million into buildings that we have to level down to dirt when we leave anyway. Try to get 10 years. And it also, with that, it absorbs the duplication of services. We have 2 kitchens, we have 2 medical departments, we have all of those things that we want to consolidate into one that we can do. Provide the necessary infrastructure to develop space housing program. As I'm talking about, we want to have kind of a continuum. We want to have an intake part of it, which is the jail as it stands right now. Another housing that would have a program available to it. Right now, there's no program, and John could contest this, going on inside the jail right now because of its overcrowded condition. What we'd like to do is to create space to have those GED programs come back, some of the other programs that we want to include. And then ultimately you would go to the community correction center, which would be your next step out the door towards reentry and have them, be successful. I mean, quite honestly, putting them in the jail and doing nothing or help them or get them any of the resources and then put them out and expect them to change, it's just not going to work. It hasn't worked yet. It's not going to work. So alleviate the overcrowding the way that it is now, and then focus on the safety of the community and aligning some of those strategic goals with the courts and the justice system to help them be more successful when they are out. You know, and then come up for a plan for the projected growth over the next 25 years. Next slide. So as I said, I'm gonna be bringing this back. We're gonna have a lot more to look at. This is just kind of a general overview of some of the concepts. And then Ken, go ahead and talk Ken is the project manager that's been helping me on it. I don't know if you recognize it, but just kind of give an overall view of what you've ran into as far as the project side of it, Ken.
Yeah, so a lot of my focus over the last couple of years has been around the infrastructure issues we're having. Not so much whether we need more beds or we want to incarcerate more people. I'm kind of on the infrastructure side, and I'm focused on the challenges we're having out at the Geiger complex. It's 1940s era facility, and it's literally dissolving into the ground. I mean, we're currently investigating what we're going to do with the kitchen building, which is having major issues. And obviously it's a 24/7, 365 operation, getting meals out to inmates. And it's a significant cost to upgrade that building and bring it up to snuff in terms of environmental systems, plumbing, some basic foundation structural issues. We've got rebar exposed underneath the building in the concrete, rusting. I mean, major issues in just that one building, not to mention the housing buildings, et cetera. So those are our challenges separately from, again, the larger issues as to whether or not we see population and incarceration trends increasing and needing more beds. I'm here to tell you that the Geiger complex is not long for this world. We've been kicking the can on that for some time. So that's a major component here. And we need to, again, have some discussions. We plan to come to you in the July timeframe with some more data around the justice component. But just in terms of the facilities themselves, we've done a lot of due diligence. We've had a lot of experts come in, and it's a significant upgrade that's required out there. And it's going to be needed soon. So, you know, we need to kind of, you know, apply that as well to this conversation. I understand there's a political component here. Folks are concerned as to whether or not we need more beds, but in terms of just the Geiger structure, availability over the next 10 years is not good if it continues to sit as it is and receive minimal, you know, maintenance. A lot of these systems are well beyond their lifespan and need significant repairs. So that's all I've got, Mike.
Okay. And then, like Ken had talked about, our plan is to come back with a lot of statistics on this next go around to show you the statistics and the population growth and what it looks like to, you know, the overall population of the county. And then talk about some of the concepts that have come up during all of these visits by the consultants and the professionals that we will share with you as well. And just kind of, you know, lay the foundation for the conversation. It's like Ken said, though, we desperately need to do something with Geiger. You know, we can't absorb their population down at the downtown. So we essentially would have to find another room for another 150 people and put them into the downtown jail, which is not possible. So look forward to some of those conversations. And we just mainly want to reach the conversation today and just get it out and talk about it a little bit. So any comments?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of you don't know, but I spent 5 years out of Geiger every Friday. I took 12-step out there, and I don't think anybody knows it. I lived in those buildings in 1972 out of Fairchild Air Force Base. They had the exact same buildings when I was stationed out there during the Vietnam War. And that place is falling apart, and it's just it's hard to make, even when we had the programs in there, which we had excellent programs out of Geiger. I don't know when this COVID thing is going to get over, but it must be terrible to live in those conditions out there and still trying to maintain some kind of a recovery attitude. Most of the people out there are low-level offenders. It's mostly drug offenses, and to move forward with your recovery in conditions like that, it must be terribly depressing. And so that whole place needs to be bulldozed and given back to the airport. I don't know where we're gonna go next, Mike, but, or anybody, but those people don't deserve to live that way, and we've got to do something, and I think it needs to happen now. Ken mentioned in the next 10 years, it's finished. I mean, it's just rusting out everywhere. You don't have to get under the building, any of those buildings, and look at the pipes like the pictures show there. You can see it from the outside, walking down the sidewalks and across the grounds, that they have patched that thing together. The staff out there is wonderful. They really do care about the inmates at that level, trying to get them back on their feet, and they just deserve a better shot at recovery. It's a tough place to live.
John hits on a good point. Let's talk about conditions of confinement. You know, you're doubled up into a cell. You get out for a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon. You're making decisions about using the shower, getting on the phone, you know, or, you know, just having some time out of your cell, go out to the rec court, you know, and the rest of the time you're spending in your cell with your cellmate. You know, when you're out at Geiger, yeah, there's a little more independence. There's a little more room in Apple. You get more time out of your cell, but they also don't have air conditioning. So those hot summers, it's about on those floors, it's extremely hot up there on those floors. And in the winter, you know, the heat is on it, but it's spread out through the entire barracks and it's hot there. So we have conditions of confinement issues both downtown and out at Geiger. That's part of it, part of the confinement. So any other questions?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I'll just try to get to some of those.
Well, I was just gonna say, if they want to have, because of our bylaws and our community,
Mhm.
the way we're going to take public comment, they can also email us their questions.
Okay.
And that way we can try to get to them the next meeting.
Yeah, because I don't know if I'll get to all of them.
So,
And just,
Mike, if I could just, oh, sorry.
go ahead, Judge Mount.
Just at the offset of this conversation, I just wanted to mention that as a judge, and I suspect Judge Fassbender, who is likely to be the next presiding, will take the same position. Issues that are legislative in nature, meaning that they potentially might go in front of the electorate to decide funding issues, those sorts of issues, judges are prohibited from speaking on or rendering an opinion on. And so I certainly will take this information back to our body, but we do have some other rules and code of conduct that we have to be really careful about. So if you're not, you know, we may abstain from voting at some point, depending on, you know, what is asked of this board ultimately. I just want to articulate that it's not because we don't care about this issue or that we're not interested, but we do have some of those concerns that that we'll have to follow.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So is that the beginning of the chat right there? So another thing that I would add out there too is that our population is controlled by decisions we make at the booking area. So the district court and the municipal court have allowed us to do ORs from the booking area. And there's a set of charges that we are allowed to OR on both of those. And we take advantage of that. They're called Spokane County Jail ORs, and we release them on those as often as we can. Hang on to the ones that we, domestic violence, DUI, the ones that we have to hang on to. So our jail is predominantly pretrial. And you look at the caseloads, even at the Superior Court level that we just reviewed, that when they're averaging 400 filings a month, I believe is what Ashley was saying, and their ability to resolve cases with the limited court space that they have and the judges that they have, it makes a backlog. And now I'm speaking to all of you right here. The backlog that we have are cases that aren't resolved. They're still sitting in the jail, but the filings are still coming in. So they're backing back up to the jail. So there's a lot of stuff that we could do to try to, help maybe mitigate some of that by creating, more space for the judges, hearing rooms for civil cases, because really it doesn't require a full-time courtroom, to my understanding, just somewhere to have a hearing at, those kind of things, out of the box thinking. So this isn't just build a building, it's trying to solve some of the bigger issues that we have to tackle, as justice professional. So Any other question? So, and I know it's a lot to throw at you, kind of, and I just, and you could tell I'm rusty at talking about the jail because I haven't had to do it for like a year and a half. But we will come back and start talking about some of the statistics along it. And then folks that are making comments on the side, if you will email those, I will get back to I'll answer each and every one of them. So unless you want the larger group to do it, and then just indicate so, and I'll make sure that the whole committee gets a chance to listen to it. The jail conversation obviously has a lot of, community interest. There's a lot of things that are involved with it, but I think it's at the point now where you've got to look at conditions of confinement. We've got to look at what we have and what we have, or resources that we have, the amount of population that we can save off, the amount of cases that are backing up, the severity of the charges that are going on, and our capability of moving and managing those folks within our system is very limited. So, it's never an easy conversation to have this conversation, but I thought it was necessary to at least breach the conversation. And then again, we'll follow that up by next meeting, having some statistics that are surround this, along with some of the population demographics. And then also some of the conceptual drawings and things that we've come across as far as input from the professionals. So I really don't have anything else. So I would just open it up now for conversation for anyone that has any other outside of this business conversation.
I'd sure like to get a copy of all the comments that are made today. It seems like there's a great number of them. I believe it's my responsibility as a community representative to take a look at each and every one of those to address it in any future meetings we might have. Also, if we could get a copy of your PowerPoint
Sure.
that you had up there, so I can look at it a little bit too.
And maybe an update on the supported release. We have the scope of work polished out. I'm going to get the scope of work over to Victor over who will put together the RFP for it. So draft with all the boilerplate language and everything that goes in there, draft the RFP. I'm hoping to get that out probably next week if I can do it. The supported release, get it going.
If I can, Mike, if I can just comment on that, for those who are making some of the comments, I would encourage you also to be, if you know of agencies that can, apply for this RFP that's going out, please be reaching out to those groups, because this is one of the ways that, at least on the district court level, we can, our hope is to, affect those pretrial, nonviolent offenses that are being held in custody. And so this is one of the tangible ways that we hope, it's a pilot program, so we don't know what will happen, but it is one of the initiatives funded by the MacArthur Foundation that we're getting up off the ground. But it's going to take, responses to the RFP and partnering with community participants. So if you know of folks in the community, please have them start looking for when that RFP goes out, so that we can get some great potential responses to that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic if the community could help with us, expose some of those, and then let them know that RFP comes out. Just let us know by email, and we'll make sure that they receive notice of it. So, anything else? Okay, well, we're gonna wrap things up. I'll let the sheriff know what transpired today when I catch up with him, and then I'll be looking for the emails and the comments from the discussion today. So I'll read my Robert rules. What is it, Robert rules of meetings, or I don't know what it's called. I'll get a copy of that, I think, so they can do this a little better.
You're doing all right.
Quick question, when the RFP goes out, where can it be found?
Angel, let me noodle that around, and then I'll get back to you specifically.
It'll definitely be on our website.
It'll be on the website, but we've also explored some other avenues too as well. Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.